Okay. Hello, everyone. All right. Let me just make sure I tweeted it out. If you guys can give a thumbs up to make sure that we can start getting people in here, start posting your questions, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. I have been up for almost 24 straight hours, so I apologize if my eyes are extremely red. The joys of parenthood. Anyways. We are here. We're ready to talk football, and we're ready to answer your questions as we get ready for week number 3. All right. Let me just pull one more thing up, and then we can get going. If this is your first time here, welcome. Couple rules for the road. Any question does suffice. I will answer season long. I'll answer DFS. I think most of our questions here tonight will be DFS, but if you have season long questions, happy to answer those. My only thing is if you can give as much detail as you can when asking the question. I think it's helpful. Things like PPR, non-PPR, what site you're playing on, whether that's DraftKings or FanDuel or season long, etc., all help the flow of the show. So with that, we have about 30 people here. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? First and foremost, congratulations, Kurt. Kurt had surgery last week, and we were all thinking about him. So very glad to see you, my friend. Glad you're seemingly doing well, and welcome. All right. Still stashing Christian Watson. It depends. I mean, how deep is your league? How many bench spots do you have? Sammy Watkins heading to IR. One would think that the Packers are going to have to get something going. Do I like any Packers this week? Not particularly. I think that this Green Bay Tampa Bay game is going to be a bit of a mess. Particularly as I think about Tampa Bay's receivers, pretty much all being out. We have Evans out, Godwin out, Julio Jones looking like a game time decision. They're signing Cole Beasley off the practice squad, off the street, basically. So the only player I like in this game is Leonard Fournette. I think that he's actually my top running back on DFS sites this week, and I have a long history of not liking Leonard Fournette, so that should tell you everything you need to know about how much I like this guy. So, yeah, I think to answer the question on Christian Watson, it just depends. Would I give up on a receiver who could become the number one target in Green Bay? I think that's kind of hard to do, but opportunity cost is a real thing, and if you need to cut him, you need to cut him. Thoughts on paying down at quarterback like Carr and pumping it up? Pitts is due, sure, but what happens if he doesn't hit? Right? I mean, he's theoretically due, but he was due last week and he was due in week 1. In cash games, would I recommend playing any quarterback other than Jalen Hurts this week? No. Unless you can go up to Josh Allen. But Jalen Hurts is the beneficiary of the Monday night favorable pricing where he played Monday night, had an excellent game, but because sites are releasing pricing, some on Monday night, some on early Tuesday morning, they're not actually reflecting that into his price. So I talked about that a lot in my article today as far as target guys who may be underpriced than what they otherwise should be because their perception has changed and no player has changed if adding another piece of data, adding a 300-yard performance than Jalen Hurts. So if you guys can give this a thumbs up, it does greatly help the show. And spending an hour here, as I mentioned right at the top, I've been up for almost a 24-hour period. So if I look like a mess, I completely apologize. But I'm here. Much like my friend Kurt, we made it. Yeah, Ryan, Phil, and John kicked me off because of Amon-Ra St. Brown. No, I missed my first Power Grid. They forget it's my show. I missed my first one ever this week, and but I took my nephew to a baseball game and was fortunate enough to get some box tickets and take him to a baseball game. And things pop up last minute, and spending time with family is becoming increasingly important. So that's what I did. Am I hallucinating yet? No, well, maybe. I fell asleep right before this, and my wife woke me up and said, "Hey, you have a show." And I'm like, "What show?" So we're here. All right, let's get into some football questions, shall we? Enough of the introductions, enough of the fun stuff. Let's get into week 3. Ramondre Mostert, half PPR. It's a good question. Ramondre or Mostert? It's Raheem Mostert for me. The reason being, I actually think this Buffalo game is going to be quite a shootout. You look at Buffalo's defense, and they are without, I believe, their top 3 defensive tackles, their top 2 cornerbacks, their top safety. Debatable Jordan Poyer, but Jordan Poyer may be out too. But Micah Hyde is out for the year now. So there's a lot of questions in Buffalo as far as like how good their defense actually will be. Sure, they have Von Miller. Sure, they have Gregory Rousseau, but Ed Oliver's out, who's a stud. Their linebackers have been good, and Matt Milano has been unbelievable. But how much of that is because of this defensive line and offensive line linemen not being able to get downfield to block a Tremaine Edmonds or Matt Milano? So we're certainly going to see, and there's certainly added pressure with those safeties being out. So I I I tend to think that this game is somewhat of a shootout. I think if you don't have your top 2 safeties or a safety in a half, because Poyer is going to be less than 100%, and Tre'Davious White being out, how are you going to stop Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill? So if the offensive line is going to do enough to block for Tua, I think the Dolphins could be in a really good spot this week. Kirk or Burrow? Whew. I'm going. I have these guys right next to each other, and I like both of them quite a bit, but I'm actually going to go with Kirk Cousins here. No. We're going with Joe Burrow. Burrow rebounds. I love both. They're both in my top 5 value plays this week, but I think Burrow against the Jets. The reason I really like Joe Burrow is the Jets have 3 sacks on the year, and if you give that Bengals offense time, they're going to shred you. And last year, the Jets were 27th, I believe, in sacks last year. I know that they were in the 25th, 26th. I don't have it somewhere in front of me, but they were in the bottom 10 in sacks last year. They have 3 total this year. Everyone is overreacting a little bit to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has always had a sack problem. Dating back to LSU, he would get sacked 35 to 40 times a year behind one of the best offensive lines in football, behind with throwing to Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, and who am I forgetting? Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, and Justin Jefferson. Like any one of us here could throw to that wide receiver core. But yet he was sacked 35 to 40 times. And sacks can always be quarterback's fault as well, but Jamar Chase's routes take a long time to develop. A lot of them are very downfield. So I think that they get back to those this week simply because the Jets don't have those pass rushers of a Micah Parsons or TJ Watt. And that should really help the Bengals this week. FanDuel Cash, which Raider is the best punt? None of them. Maybe. I mean, it sounds like Josh Jacobs is going to play. And if that's the case, you can take out all the other running backs. He didn't travel with the team earlier this week, but reports are saying that he flew out today to the game. Tends to make me think that he's at least going to give it a shot. So Zamir White would be the guy that if Jacobs is out, that I would look to over a Brandon Bolden. But like Hunter Renfrow is out. Okay. Does that just help Devontae Adams? I think it does. Does it help Darren Waller? Yes. Mac Hollins, I think, is interesting on DraftKings because he's like the only sub 4K guy that's even viable. But on FanDuel, I honestly don't think he's that viable just because there's not a lot of value plays this week on FanDuel, but you have guys like Curtis Samuel at 6,200 or 6,300, Garrett Wilson at 6,100, Chris Olave at 55, Drake London, who I love this week, at 62. You could even like a guy like Allen Robinson or Adam Thielen at 6,000. So you're not going to find that, the lowest guy I would probably, if you want to take a shot on Brashad Perryman for Tampa Bay, go for it at 5,300. But I'm not doing that. I think it's risky, and there's just not a ton of value this week where you can easily build a lineup with a Cooper Kupp or a Justin Jefferson. It's really, really difficult because, guys I'm looking at this week are players such as Leonard Fournette, who I said at the top was my top running back of the week. I like David Montgomery at 7,000 or 7,100. I like Dalvin Cook quite a bit at 83. I could be convinced and take Christian McCaffrey at 85. And we're talking FanDuel here. And if I go further down, if you want to take a shot on a Aaron Jones or Alvin Kamara, I think that's okay as your third running back. But there's not like a large number of options this week, unfortunately. Like if I look at sub 6K running backs, you're looking at Cam Akers or Dameon Pierce, or Raheem Mostert, and that doesn't, for a cash game setting, that doesn't make anybody feel good about anything, to be honest. What is my gut feeling between starting Ayuk and Olave? It depends what your other options are. I'll say that time and time again. I don't know if this is a season-long league. I don't know if this is FanDuel, DraftKings. So clarify that, and I'll answer it a little bit better. I think starting both of them is risky. I had to start one. If I had to start one of the two, it would probably be Ayuk, because I feel a little bit safer of him having a more consistent role than Olave, with Olave being at least third, potentially fourth in that offense behind Alvin Kamara in the passing game. I mean, I know Olave's been shown some bright spots, but he's definitely behind Thomas, and he's definitely behind Landry. And 5 for 80 last week. Is that sustainable, or is the 3 for 41 that we saw in week 1 more sustainable? I don't know that there's enough volume, to be honest. I think part of what happened last week is Tampa Bay's run defense is very good. They shut down Cordero Paz. I can't even think right now. They shut down Alvin Kamara and forced Jameis Winston to try and beat them, and he couldn't. So, and Alvin Kamara was out last week anyway. I'm clearly not 100%. We're getting through this. Romeo Dobbs. If you want to take a shot on Romeo Dobbs, I talked a little bit about it earlier. Go for it. I'm not doing it. I understand the logic, and I understand in a GPP why you might want to do that. Somebody has to catch the ball in this offense, and with Sammy Watkins on IR, completely agree. I don't know that Jacobs is out, but I think it leans towards, unless something happened in the last hour, it leans towards a lot of Devontae Adams this week. Tampa Bay wide receiver pecking order. Is Scotty Miller a viable option for FanDuel Cash? No. He had like 8 targets last week. Yeah, but what did he actually do with them? Yeah, 3 for 34. Like, no thank you. I'm not playing any of these guys in cash. So I know we're trying to get cute here, but I think for cash, it's really, let's try and keep it simple. Let's just avoid and come to the realization that Cooper Kupp or Jonathan Taylor or Justin Jefferson, as much as I'd love to find a way to get those guys in my cash game lineup, I think you're just giving up too much. Greg Dortch and Jacoby Myers over Devontae Smith and Terry McLaurin? No. 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 Absolutely not. Wide receiver pick 3: Hill, Pittman, Chase, Higgins. Hill is a definite. Chase is a definite. We're playing those two seemingly every week. I'm assuming you drafted them very early. I'm not benching Jamar Chase. Comes down to Pittman or Higgins. It's a good problem to have, where I do like the value in getting both of the Bengals receivers. I'd probably go Pittman this week. I do really like the player, simply because we saw what this offense was without him, and it was absolutely atrocious. So I would go with that route. If you guys can give a thumbs up, it does really help the show. I know I've been asking for it a lot more recently, and subscribe if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel. So let me just tweet out the link one more time, and then we will get back to business. All right. Best wide receivers 4,000 and under on DraftKings. Yeah. This one, a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, and we've been talking a little bit about it. There's not much there. But if I look at who potentially could be an option, let's just pull it up really quickly. Zay Jones at 4K. I know you said under 4K, but Brashad Perryman at 39, although I don't necessarily love him. I would rather have Zay Jones if you can find the extra $100. And then the only other guy that I like is Mac Hollins at 3,300. I think Mac Hollins is interesting simply because if I look at what he was able to do last week against the Cardinals, he had 5 for 66 on 8 targets. You're not going to find too many 8 target guys in that sub 4K range. And with Hunter Renfrow being out, they need a second receiver. Josh Jacobs potentially being banged up. So you're going to see Hollins get, I think, 5, 6, 7 targets, which at 3,300 is a good option. Both safeties are out. Okay. Is Poyer confirmed? I thought he was just highly questionable. Oh, Poyer is out. Okay, as of an hour ago. Yeah, so I mean that just helps the Dolphins even more. That's right. So let's just go through this. If I just pull up their depth chart, I believe it is Tre'Davious White is out, Dane Jackson is out, um, Micah Hyde is out for the rest of the season, Jordan Poyer is out, um, Ed Oliver is out, and then I believe they have. That was just off the top of my head. I'm pulling up this thing now. Jordan Phillips and Tim Settle looks like he's going to miss. Like they're going to be starting guys at corner. Christian Benford, 2022 6th round pick, and Khair Elam, who's a first round pick this year. So 2 rookies are going to be starting at corner. And safety, they currently only have 2 safeties, 2 free safeties, one of which is a 6th round pick last year. They don't have much. So you're really trying to go on the name of the front of the jersey and the scheme, and instead of who's actually there. How are they going to stop Tyreek Hill? I have zero clue. Or Jalen Waddle, for that matter. I mean, these are a matchup nightmare, to be honest. If Myers is Myers healthy, or does Aguilar interest you at all in tournaments? I think Myers is healthy. As healthy as I don't think he's at risk for not missing, but I do think Aguilar is interesting. I think he's going to be somewhat popular. I don't think he's going to be extremely popular, but yeah, Myers, for everything I'm aware of, is completely healthy. Who should you play if Herbert can't play? It depends on what your options are. I mean, if you're looking at like waiver wire stuff, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, I'm trying to see who else might be in that waiver wire range. Marcus Mariota, I think, is in a decent spot this week. Daniel Jones, if you're desperate, something like that. One quarterback, Brady or Goff. Goff. Pains me to say that, but I don't trust it. Like I said, I don't trust anything in this Tampa Bay Green Bay game. Who's Tom Brady going to throw to? And Green Bay has one of the best secondaries in football. David Montgomery ran for 122 yards last week. How, if you compare David Montgomery to Leonard Fournette, they're like night and day. So, Brady doesn't look like mid-season peak Brady yet, especially if Julio Jones doesn't play. Like, you're looking at guys like I said, Cole Beasley and Scotty Miller and Brashad Perryman. That doesn't scare me much. Is the sharp move to pay up for at least one running back with all the group think that wide receiver is so loaded? Yeah, I'm paying up for Dalvin Cook. I can't find a way to get all the way up to I can't find a way to get all the way up to like a Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey. So Cook's as high as I've been able to actually go. I actually do think in tournaments, Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson are going to be a little bit under rostered from what they should be. So if I just look at my roster percentages that I put together, Justin Jefferson I have at about 11%, and Cooper Kupp I have at about 12%. What's interesting, Tyreek Hill right now, and this could change, but and these are not always 100% accurate. Tyreek Hill right now, 7.5%. If I look at Jalen Waddle, 6%. I know where I'm going to be going tomorrow, and I'm going to be going lineups with Tua, one of those receivers, and running it back with Stephon Diggs, and hoping that game shoots out. Do I like Lockett or Metcalf this week? It's Tyler Lockett for me. I'm really worried about DK Metcalf going forward. I think that if I think about who Geno Smith fits as a receiver, Geno Smith leads the NFL in completion percentage. He's at 81% currently. They are trying to just get him throws that he can make. He can move the ball. And who is that receiver that he's going to trust? It's going to be Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf is those 50-50 balls deep downfield. They're not asking him to throw those routes. They're not, he's being smart in knowing his limitations and knowing that he's not Russell Wilson. So I have some pretty big concerns about Metcalf going forward. So we'll see. But as of now, I'm liking Lockett quite a bit. Eckler's better than Fournette? Maybe. I don't love Chase Daniel. Who wins Cordero Patterson, Garrett Wilson, and I don't understand the question, Nick. So, Damian Pierce, FanDuel Cash. Yeah, I think he's fine. I think it's risky, but the Bears looked horrible last week against the run. So I think Damian Pierce is if you want to go sub 6K, he's the top guy that I would be comfortable with. What is his upside? Probably not all that great. You run the risk of if the Texans get behind. I don't think they will. I think they'll be in this game. If they get behind, you'll see Rex Burkhead. You just will. I mean, Pierce has one target per game over the last 2 games. Burkhead's the pass blocker. He's the receiver. So, thoughts on Jacksonville's offense? That's an interesting game, right? So the over-under started at like 46.5. It's down to 42.5, mostly because of the Justin Herbert news. Jacksonville going on the road, facing Los Angeles. J.C. Jackson is a name that if he's out, that's a big loss. He's one of the better corners in football, so it's looking like he's going to be doubtful, which if I think about the offense I like Christian Kirk a lot. I think that goes without saying. He was paid a lot of money. I think a lot of us still have perceptions of Christian Kirk being the guy that he was in Arizona, but that hasn't proven to be true so far. He's averaging 92.5 yards per game. 97.5 yards per game, and has 2 touchdowns, including 2 last week. So they faced 2 mediocre defenses, if not subpar defenses, in the Colts and the Commanders. I think the Colts secondary isn't all that great. Their run stopping unit is pretty solid, but as a secondary, they have some ways to go. Is A.J. Brown a priority play for me this week? Not necessarily. I think his price has gotten up to be a little too expensive. At least on FanDuel. Let me look at his price on DraftKings. On DraftKings, A.J. Brown is $7,300. Yeah. I would probably rather go now. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the fade for me pretty clearly this week at 7,200 in GPPs. Look, I get all the love about Detroit. I was very wrong about Amon-Ra St. Brown last week, but this is still Detroit. It's still Jared Goff. They're facing a better defense than what they faced last week. Washington's defense really can't stop anybody. I understand why you like A.J. Brown. I would probably in a tournament rather go with A.J. Brown over Amon-Ra St. Brown, because if I look at roster percentages, going back to what I put together on a weekly basis, my update currently has Amon-Ra St. Brown at 23% on DraftKings. It has A.J. Brown at 10.2%. You're getting half the roster percentage. Is there and this isn't always true, but what a lot of people say is there a double, if you're paying double the roster percentage, is there a 2x times more likely to reach value than for Amon-Ra St. Brown than AJ Brown? And I just don't think that that's true. With that said, I would rather find the money and go with Tyreek Hill, like I've been talking about, at 7,600, or even Stephon Diggs at 7,700. So I'm probably avoiding that rate, both players. I'd rather go down to Jalen Waddle if you can't find a way to go up. But that's mostly because I just love this Miami offense this week. Kirk, Bateman, McLaurin, Hollywood, Connor. PPR. Kirk is in. Bateman, we'll get back to. McLaurin, Connor. This one's tough because Connor's a 3 or 4:25 game. McLaurin is a noon game, and Bateman is a noon game as well. In Hollywood Brown. Yeah. So here's what I would do. I would go Christian Kirk definitely in your roster. I think Christian Kirk, like we talked about, he's averaging 97.5 yards per game. J.C. Jackson probably not going to play. I would say it would be a very big surprise if he plays. Playing Christian Kirk. Playing Terry McLaurin. I think that this Washington Commanders passing attack is for real. I think Carson Wentz, they found something. And he's looking like he did back in Philadelphia. So I'm playing Terry McLaurin just based off of talent. So it comes down to Bateman, Hollywood, or Connor. I am okay with saying I will play Connor if he's active, Hollywood if he's not, and sitting Rashad Bateman. I know Rashad Bateman is a fantasy darling. I get it. But with J.K. Dobbins coming back and Bateman has 6 total catches on the season. He's averaging 27.8 yards per catch. He has a 75-yard touchdown and a 55-yard touchdown. Those are not sustainable. There will be a game where Bateman comes back and he crashes down to earth. So those other guys I feel much safer about. All right. So 25 minutes left. If you guys could give this a thumbs up, that would be great. At what point do we have to consider Tua for cash? Right now. Yeah. I think Tua is completely in the realm of possibility with Jordan Poyer being out. I would say if Jordan Poyer was in, I don't love him as much, but that's 3 all-pro players that are missing from this secondary. At 6,100 on DraftKings, the guys that he is around right now, Carson Wentz, Tom Brady, Derek Carr, Jared Goff. In that price range, even go up to Aaron Rodgers or Matt Stafford. In that price range, Tua will be my DraftKings quarterback, without a doubt. FanDuel, a little bit different. So FanDuel, you don't get the 300-yard passing bonus. And if I look at Tua's price, he is at 7,300. Compare that to Jalen Hurts, who's at 8,100. I want Jalen Hurts simply because he has the rushing upside. And you don't get that 300. Like I said, you don't get that 300-yard bonus that you otherwise get on DraftKings. Why are we sleeping on Nelson Aguilar? Because of the history of his time as a player, I would say. And he had one really good game against Pittsburgh. Like week 1, 3 for 28 and a fumble loss against the Dolphins. Okay, not great. Week 2, 6 for 110. Which player is he? He has upside. Like he has always had upside. He's always had a bunch of speed. He's always been a good route runner. He's been terrible actually catching the ball. His hands are awful. But inconsistency is why a lot of people are off of him. Would it surprise anyone if he had 3 for 25 this week? No. Does he have upside? Absolutely. Going back to the roster percentages, he's currently going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3% rostered. It's probably where he should be. So, have 4,600 left on DraftKings for tight end. Ertz, or do I have someone else in mind? It's probably Ertz, but Ertz will also be likely the most popular. Can't go up to Goddard. A lot of people like Tyler Higbee. I think I would rather go Zach Ertz. So, in one thing on Goddard, I just need to say really quickly. So, the decision between Zach Ertz and Goddard for me is an easy one. It's Zach Ertz by a pretty wide margin, and I know that Dallas Goedert gets yardage and he gets action between the 20s, but Zach Ertz leads red zone targets for all tight ends this season. He was, let me just pull up the stats for last season. If I look at last season, Zach Ertz was second in tight ends with 20 red zone targets, compared behind only Mark Andrews. He had 20. Dallas Goedert had 6. You have to have better touchdown upside than six targets in the red zone for Dallas Goedert. If I look at Tyler Higbee, it's better, but I would still probably go with Zach Ertz. He had about 15 last year. So, is this the most difficult DK pricing on a slate? No, not even close. Not even close. There's been much more weeks that are more difficult. You don't have to. I mean, you don't have to leave any money on the table, to be honest. I mean, we talked about, like, if I just look at value right now, 2 at 6,200, 6,100, Jared Goff at 58, Marcus Mariota I could make a case for at 55. And that's, I don't really want to go below that. Running backs, I'll give to you, are pretty thin. Like, you're going to have to spend some money on running backs this week. Otherwise, you're looking at guys like going down the list. Well, that's a Sunday, Monday slate. Raheem Mostert at 4,500, I think, is fine. If I look at Michael Carter in a PPR setup, I know Cincinnati's run defense is pretty good, but at 5,200, you just have to go more balanced this week. Like Miles Sanders at 5,500, not awful, not going to kill you, but you just have to come to the realization that it's going to be really difficult to get some of those top end guys, unless you're playing a guy like a Mac Hollins or Rashad Perryman. But there's been weeks where you have to pay up for a top end quarterback, or have to pay up for a, Cooper Kupp facing a number 32 ranked pass defense, or Calvin Johnson back in the day, where it was basically like everyone's paying up for him. So no, I've been doing this for far too long to call this week the hardest week. I actually think weeks where just like there are no great plays and there's a whole bunch of just lumped up in the middle, those weeks are harder for me, at least. Cordero Patterson and Garrett Wilson. Nick, I don't understand. You've asked that question a number of different times. I don't. You need to reword it, buddy. Is it too cute to play a Miami running back as a low one, bring back? No. No, not at all. I mean, like I said, they're missing their top 3 defensive tackles. So up the middle, Von Miller is a pretty good run stopper for being an elite pass rusher, but he's not going to stop those draws or those dives up the middle. So, um, should you roll with Aaron Rodgers, Allen Lazard, and DFS cashing? No, no. Tampa Bay's defense is really good, so I wouldn't do that. Too many options this week. DK Cash, Waddle, or Mike Williams. That sort of depends on Justin Herbert. Not really for me, though. I'm going Jalen Waddle. I could be completely wrong. And if Buffalo is able to shut down this Miami defense or Miami offense this week, then let's just give them the Super Bowl. Like if they're able to do this with 2 rookie corners, 2 very inexperienced safeties, I don't know what magic Sean McDermott is pulling, but he deserves a massive raise, to be honest. Would I stack 2 pass catchers with Tua? It worked last week, didn't it? Didn't it? I can't even speak. God. It's a rough one for your boy. It worked last week. Is it going to work again? I don't know that Tua is going to throw 6 touchdowns, but could he throw 300 yards? Sure. If you're going to do that, you might as well just go all in on this game. And I don't even know if it's possible, but Tua, Waddle, Hill, Diggs, figure out the rest of your lineup. Yeah, I would play Rodgers over Russell Wilson. I don't love it, but I haven't even thought about either of those quarterbacks, to be honest. Rodgers, Wilson. I have Rodgers slightly ahead of him. Antonio Gibson, Allen Robinson, Rashad Bateman. I'm not doing Rashad Bateman. Michael Carter, Cam Akers. I'm going Antonio Gibson and Akers versus Carter. That one's tough. Robinson. Yeah, I'm going Michael Carter. I think the pass catching upside is there, and I expect the Jets to be coming back from behind based off of them not being able to rush Joe Burrow. So I expect them to be behind in this game, and Michael Carter fits that pretty well. Yeah, Irv Smith at 3,100 is a good play as well. In DraftKings Cast is Olave the best option for wide receiver 3 at 4,600 or less. Let me see. 4,600 or less. Olave is certainly going to be near the top. Olave. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it depends because if you could take $600 and go down to Zay Jones, love it, or go down to Brashad Perriman. I don't love Brashad Perriman, but you can do something with that $700 and line up there. I think that's entirely reasonable. Internet well. Awesome. Are we back? Yeah, I think we're back. Right? Sorry about the internet issues. Hopefully we are back. I have no idea if we are. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, so we will go another 13 minutes. Hopefully my internet, I don't know what's going on with Xfinity. It like stops for like 10 seconds and then goes back on. I have the best internet we can get in Chicago, so I don't know. Honest opinion on Dobbins' start, I think he's going to touch the ball 8 to 10 times. I think they're going to ease him back in. That's my honest opinion. How do I feel about Derrick Henry this week? Nobody's thinking about Derrick Henry, and I'm not ready to write him off. I think that Derrick Henry could be a guy that certainly has, like, to say he doesn't have upside is incorrect. He's going to have some of these massive games again. Whether that comes this week or not, I'm not entirely sure. I think he's in a good position to do so. Do I love him based off of some of his pricing this week? I think that's where it's a little bit challenging, because going back to the original premise that I started the show with, you get discounts based pricing doesn't factor in Monday night games. It just doesn't, based on how they have to release the pricing and when they have to release pricing. For whatever reason, it doesn't work. So Derrick Henry's awful Monday night game was not factored into his pricing for this week. So if I look at 8,100 on DraftKings, for example, it's too expensive for the risk that you're going to have to take. With that said, because he's going to be risky, no one's going to play him. So from a tournament perspective and from a game theory perspective, if no one is going to play him, then he has upside. And if he has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, which Derrick Henry theoretically could do just about against any defense, then you're in an absolute tremendous position. Thoughts on Gibson in cash? What's his price? 64 is too expensive on FanDuel or on DraftKings, I think. I think there's better options. And on FanDuel, he's 6,700. I mean, if you can't get up any higher, I think he's fine. As like a last guy that you put into your lineup, and you're just like, I can't make any adjustments off of this. With that said, I would rather have Aaron Jones and David Montgomery at $300 and $400 more. No. I just don't know that how much that. I mean, it depends. In a season-long league and you don't have money options, sure. But in DFS, no. I mean, the snap count doesn't. They're only bringing him in when he's going to touch the ball. So Seahawks last week faced. Who did they play? Week 1. They played the 49ers and they were blown out in that game. So were they just trying to get the rookie touches because he didn't play in week 1? Probably. Can't do it. Chase Edmonds or Ramondre Stevenson, Chase Edmonds. How concerned would I be to stack Higgins with Burrow? No, I think that's fine. I don't view the drop off between Higgins and Chase as ultimately that severe. So if there's a significant, if you can say, hey, I can only get up to Higgins, I'm fine with that. And more people are going to have Higgins. No, this is cash. I think Higgins is fine in cash. We've talked enough about Aguilar, to be honest. What is Tom Brady and Cole Beasley's ceiling? I mean, Cole Beasley's ceiling is 6 catches, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Tom Brady's ceiling is 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Something like that. Should you start Justin Herbert? No, I don't think he's going to play. Is it worth to wait for Connor status with guys like Dillon or Patterson as other options if Connor can't go? It's certainly going to drive his ownership roster percentage down because people are not going to want to wait. 6,200, I think he's a good play. If I think about, are you playing Leonard Fournette? That's the question I would ask yourself. If that answer is no, I would find a way to spend $300 more and prioritize getting Leonard Fournette into your lineup. I think this offense is going to run through Fournette, whether that's through the passing game or through the rushing attack. And we saw what David Montgomery was able to do to the Packers run defense last week, and he had 122 yards. They have no other options. I really, really like Leonard Fournette this week. I also like David Montgomery against Houston. So I think both of those players are fine. But in a GPP, no one's going to be I shouldn't say no one. I have Connor at 3% versus Fournette, who is at 17, and Montgomery, who's at 15. So you get the benefit of Connor. Now, what I would say is if you're going to play Connor, I would try and have a receiver or a flex in that 4 p.m. game that I could upgrade if Connor does go out. Because if Connor goes out, Eno Benjamin does become interesting. And you may want to get cute or creative and say, okay, I'm going to downgrade Connor, upgrade somewhere else. Not saying you have to do that, but it's certainly an option. Go with Derek Carr this week. Is it going to be popular? Yeah, I think it'll be somewhat popular. It's going to be overly popular. There's a lot of options this week, to be honest. I wouldn't start both unless it depends on who your other options are. Elwood. It's hard to know. I do think that game is going to be high scoring. I don't typically like to start running backs in the same game in the same team, but if you don't have any other options that are worthy of it, then I think that's totally fine. Is Chase Daniel a viable emergency start in place of Herbert in a Superflex league? Yeah. If you don't have another quarterback, start the quarterback in Superflex. All right, we have 5 minutes left. I think I'm all caught up with questions. We will go and answer any questions that you guys may have until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock Eastern. And then we'll cut it off and I will get some much needed rest. Cole Hardman or MVS and FanDuel GPPs or both in a Kansas City stack. Whoo, Greg, you're bringing some off the wall questions late in the show. I like it. Scantling or Hardman? I have Scantling ahead of Hardman. I think playing both in a Kansas City stack is difficult because there's a guy named Travis Kelce there that if I'm stacking Kansas City, I probably want. So I would pick one of them, probably MVS. Yeah, the likes you guys are awesome. I mean, I can't thank you everyone enough for liking this video. It does really help the channel and it is free. So yeah, I love Dalvin. Is that Brandon Cooks? No. It's Dalvin Cook, right? Dalvin Cook. Yeah, I love Dalvin Cook this week. He's one of my top plays. Dobbins, Walker, Burkhead, Eckler. You want to play Eckler for sure. I would play those Miami running backs over Walker. I would play those Miami running backs. Hold on. Sturt versus Burkhead. Play him over Burkhead. And Dobbins. Now we're getting interesting because I would probably take a chance. And I know I said that I'm worried about worried about J.K. Dobbins and his volume that he's going to have. But if he's in the red zone, I think he's going to get the carries. And I would probably play Dobbins over Chase Edmonds. Validating this. Trying to make sure I get this one right. I don't necessarily. Yeah, I'm doing it. Dobbins. So Eckler, Mostert, Dobbins, Edmonds. If you wanted to start both Miami Dolphins running backs there, I'm fine with it. I'm not doing Tony Pollard, I don't think. No. Curtis Samuel, Bateman, Cortland Sutton, or Garrett Wilson. I have them ranked. I love Cortland Sutton this week. So Cortland Sutton, for those of you who may not follow the work of Cecil Lammy, he works for Football Guys, but he's also the beat reporter for one of the beat radio. I don't even know if you call him a beat reporter, but he's in the building every day in Denver. And he's been talking about how much Russell Wilson loves Cortland Sutton. So I'm playing Cortland Sutton out of this group. I would go Sutton, Garrett Wilson, Curtis Samuel, Rashad Bateman. I'm just worried about Rashad Bateman and how realistic some of those long touchdowns are. Move up from Seattle to Houston? No, I wouldn't, because Chicago doesn't really throw the ball. So your upside on sacks and interceptions just isn't there. Does Amon-Ra come? That's the question. Does Amon-Ra St. Brown come crashing back down at some point? I think so. He's a rookie. Or no, second-year player. Need sleep. Jared Goff's his quarterback. He's not going to continue this pace. Like, I have some people saying he's this year's Cooper Kupp. You have to have him to win. He's not Cooper Kupp. He's just not. Is Adam Thielen going to end up in my lineup? No. I like the game, but Thielen hasn't done enough for me. Is Scotty Miller worth a cheap pick? Yeah, I think he's fine. I don't love him, but if you want to say, hey, I believe in Scotty Miller, I'm not going to stop you and say no. Would I do it in cash games? No. Would I do it in GPPs? Fine. It's completely okay. What are your thoughts on playing running backs in same games? I don't have an issue with it. I know a lot of people did it with McCaffrey and Barkley last week. I didn't like those players. I know McCaffrey ended up okay. Barkley sort of disappointed a little bit. But it's not. I don't evaluate those one way or the other, to be honest. All right, last one for the night, and then we're going to call it. Dameon Pierce or Breece Hall, full PPR. The PPR piece makes it a little more interesting. Dameon Pierce just doesn't catch the ball and is not going to be out there enough. I know Breece Hall doesn't get the volume. I'm still going to go Dameon Pierce. I think Pierce against the Bears. The Bears were shredded last week. So yeah, I'm gonna go Dameon Pierce. Fine, one more. Start 2 PPR running backs: Sanders, Elliott, Wilson, or let's just Sanders. Sanders, Wilson, Elliott. So I am going to go PPR, Wilson, Sanders, For Elliott, I'm going to sit Ezekiel Elliott, and I don't like it. I'm playing Miles Sanders in a PPR. I want to play Jeff Wilson. I think the volume is going to consistently be there. I can't say the same thing about Ezekiel Elliott and the offensive line issues that are going on in Dallas right now. He's had 2 catches. That's not. No, it's. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's Sanders and Jeff Wilson for me. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We will see everyone next week. Go watch the Power Grid. If you haven't done so already, go get that video. Like, I wasn't on it this week, but I'll be back on it next week. So thanks, everyone. I know it's late, so good luck next week, and we will see everyone at a later time. Thanks, everybody.